Welcome to the Book Buds presentation for IDW Publishing and Top Shelf Productions. I'm Keith Davidson, the Senior PR Manager for IDW Publishing.
And this is Lee Walton joining you from the Top Shelf side of IDW. We're so happy to be here talking about our fall 2021 books. Keith, let's get on to it.
Cool. Start off with Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures Volume 1, which is a middle grade entry into Lucasfilm's massive multi-publisher High Republic initiative. Written by Daniel Jose Older, the best-selling novelist of Star Wars Last Shot and also the Shadow Shaper series. This volume introduces a cast of likable teenage Jedi protagonists trying to find their way during a worldwide catastrophe, and also spotlights the fan favorite Yoda character during his never-before-seen younger years. Give you a little preview of the interior artwork by Harvey Talabau. This is some gorgeous artwork. This book will be out in November. Next up, let's talk about Sonic the Hedgehog's 30th anniversary special, the deluxe edition. As kids, Gail Galligan and the McElroy brothers obsessively played the Sonic the Hedgehog video games. And in the time since, they've grown up to be New York Times bestselling authors of Babysitter's Club and Adventure Zone, respectively. For them, writing new tales for this iconic character is a lifelong dream come true. This project is just one thrilling entry into Sega's year-long celebration of Sonic's 30th anniversary, generating excitement ahead of the Sonic the Hedgehog film sequel's release in April 2022. I'll give you a preview of this artwork as well. This title will be coming out in October. Next up, I'd like to talk about Lock and Key: The Golden Age. Expanding on the lore of the blockbuster Lock and Key graphic novel series, award-winning novelist Joe Hill and artist Gabriel Rodriguez reveal the secret history of the Locke family ancestors in the early 20th century, which culminates in a crossover with Morpheus, Lucifer, and more characters from Neil Gaiman's beloved Sandman universe. Whether it's for longtime followers of the Lock and Key and Sandman sagas, or for audiences excited by the second season of Netflix's adaptation coming this October, The Golden Age is fantastic storytelling that's guaranteed to unlock the imagination. This is coming out in November, and as you can see, here's some gorgeous art from Gabe Rodriguez of, here's the Sandman character, and other scenes from Lock and Key: The Golden Age.
That's awesome, Keith. I mean, I guess this is not just a crossover between two iconic comic book series and graphic novel series that have been, huge for decades, but also, I guess, a crossover between two Netflix shows, isn't
it? Yes, it is.
So a huge audience for that one. Mm-hmm. Very exciting. Well, let's jump into the top shelf side. First off, let's talk about Better Place by Dwayne Murray and Sean Daly. This is a really touching story that is one of those tough to pin down, could work for middle grade readers, YA, or adults, and I think will hit them differently depending on where they are in life. But this is about a young boy named Dylan who is best friends with his grandfather and loves to dress up as superheroes and go on imaginary adventures with them and with his grandfather. And then at the beginning of the book, tragically, his grandfather passes away, and his mom has a hard time explaining to Dylan what has happened to him. She says that he's off in a better place. And so Dylan, of course, like any intrepid young adventurer, decides to set off on a journey to find that better place so he can be reunited with his grandpa. And so this is really the story of a sidekick learning to become his own superhero, if you will. If you jump ahead, we can see on the next slide that the scenes in the real world are set in black and white, and the scenes in his imagination are set in full color. So it's primarily this gorgeous black and white ink wash artwork with occasional jumps into color to represent the imaginary world that Dylan has a hard time letting go of. So in the real world, they are simply riding a shopping cart in a parking garage, but in his imagination, they're flying a spaceship. If you look on the next slide, you'll see some examples of the dialogue scenes as early in the book, he and his mother and his grandfather are arguing. They're having a tough time, and unfortunately, his grandfather's death makes it even tougher. But over the course of his journey, he's going to learn some things about himself. His mom is going to process a lot of her feelings, and by the end, they really come to a new understanding of each other and vow to sort of create that better place for themselves going forward and be a better family to each other. If we look on the next slide, we've got one more scene here of some of the guest art in this book. So not only does this feature the terrific work of Dwayne Murray and Sean Daly, but we also have guest artwork by, in this case, Jeff Lemire, for some of the splash pages and comic books that the character in the universe reads, called this character called Red Rocket. So he sets off to follow his role model's journey into the unknown. Another sort of journey book we have is coming up next is Junk Wraith. This is a debut by Eleanor Ritchie, and she's a terrific new graphic novelist from Sweden. And this is a story about a teenager who is a figure skater, and set in a sort of science fiction fantasy future world in which everything must be recycled. And if something gets thrown away or something gets forgotten or abandoned, there's a chance that it will become a junk wraith, which is sort of a haunted ghost that attempts to take revenge on the person that abandoned it. So in this case, her ice skates, when in a fit of emotion, she decides to give up skating, she becomes haunted by those and needs to set off on a journey to vanquish this junk wraith and make peace with her inner emotions. If you jump to the next slide, we'll see some of the gorgeous, gorgeous artwork by Eleanor Ritchie. On the left, this is a skating scene, and on the right, a sort of cityscape. You can see the wild, futuristic color palette that Eleanor's using here, and the digital effects as she's consulting her handheld digital assistant, Frank, who is my favorite character in the whole book. He's adorable. He's the best thing since BB-8. And if you go to the next slide, we'll see some more of her fantasy journey as she leaves the town that she knows behind to try to find this junk wraith and make her peace with her emotions. On the next slide, there's one more gorgeous double-page spread. So this is going to appeal to fans of Over the Garden Wall, of Scott Pilgrim, and a lot of other wonderful animation and graphic novels, but also deal with issues of queer coming of age and universal coming of age, deciding what kind of person you want to be going forward. The next book here that we have is Secret Passages. Speaking of queer coming of age, this is a very unique book. A lot of queer and trans folks talk about their childhood as something that was in some ways real and in some ways not, because you were in the closet and you were sort of pretending to be someone that deep down you knew maybe wasn't you. And so in this case, we have a trans author, Axel Lenoir, who's a fantastic cartoonist from Quebec. She's done two graphic novels with us, Camp Spirit and What If We Were, which was just nominated for the Eisner Award. And she's sort of reconstructing her imaginary girlhood. But of course, because Axel is wildly creative, it takes all kinds of metafictional and science fiction twists. So over the next couple slides, we can see some scenes of her as the adult author grappling with creating this story. And then on the next slide, we'll see some of the childhood scenes. These are really inspired by sort of newspaper comic strips that she loved growing up. And then on the next page, next slide, we'll see her as her child self sort of confronting the spooky spirit of the woods and trying to screw up her courage to confront it. So a really, really unique book that is, again, full of emotion and personal resonance, but also wild and crazy. And finally, I want to talk about one of our biggest books of the fall, Ballad for Sophie. This is a story of classical music, of rivalry, of friendship, of romance and regret. If you click to the next slide, we'll see our two main characters. This is Sophie on the left, and on the right, Julien Dubois, a famous classical piano player who has gone into retirement and never gives interviews to anyone. But she manages to get him to open up about his past and what happened to him. And we'll learn this immense, fascinating story. If we see on the next slide, we'll see the world of music coming to life and the passionate effect that it can have on somebody, where a piano can actually appear to fly in midair. And next slide, we will see some of the romance scenes in this book as he goes through his victories and his regrets. And one of the things that happens when you become a worldwide music celebrity on the next slide is that life can start to get a little crazy. So here's one of the sort of psychedelic sequences as he gets into sex and drugs and rock and roll. So for fans of the Queen movie, Bohemian Rhapsody, or the Elton John movie, Rocket Man, or films like Amadeus, this is a really literary and rich and intoxicating graphic novel that's full of twists and turns, almost like A Night at the Opera in graphic novel form. This is by Felipe Melo and Juan Cavia. Ballad for Sophie will be out in September. And that's it for me. This has been Lee Walton with Top Shelf.
And Keith Davidson with IDW Publishing.
Thanks so much, and enjoy the rest of your show.
Take care.